That's okay. Thank you all, and welcome to today's full council meeting. There's a nice lot of energy around the place, I can certainly tell you that. Welcome to members of the public who are attending in the public gallery, to those in the conference hall, and to those of you watching this meeting via our YouTube channel. For those in the building, I'd like to draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure. Please leave the chamber by the nearest exit and congregate outside the cathedral. As with any council meeting, please treat each other with due courtesy, tolerance and respect. So, on to the agenda. Item 2, apologies for absence. So I have received absence apologies from Councillors Ali, Bradshaw, Davies, Hartley, Hume, Pearce, Morris, James Scott and Sharon Scott and Councillor Goodman. Are there any other apologies? Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Please, can I ask whether any councillors have any interests to declare regarding the items on today's agenda? Yes, Councillor Kent.
Lord Mayor, just a very small interest. I was part of the Bristol Parent Carer Forum, which elected some of the officers, which is part of the Gold Motion. It's not a pecuniary interest. I just want to put it on record.
Thank you. Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the previous meeting of full council held on the 5th of July 2022 be agreed as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, my Lord Mayor.
Can I take it that the minutes are agreed? Aye. Thank you. Item 5, Lord Mayor's business. Council notes the sad news that the former councillor, Charles Lucas, who served the Clifton ward from 2013 to 2016, has recently passed away. Full council will now hold 1 minute silence in his memory. Please rise. Thank you. Be seated. We now have 30 minutes of public forum, which is split into 2 sections, 15 minutes for petitions and statements and 15 minutes for questions. Details of the petitions, statements and questions received have been published on our website. I'll go through the list, calling on those who have indicated that they planned to attend the meeting. And then speakers will be asked to pay attention to the traffic lights at either end of the dais and start to wrap up, please, when the light turns amber. There is 1 public forum petition received for this meeting, which is displayed on the screen. However, the petition organiser has been unable to attend the meeting. Thank you. Okay. There were a total of 50 public statements received. A list will be displayed on the screen. 13 members of the public indicated that they planned to attend and speak to these statements. They are displayed on the screen and we will run through those statements in their order. I'll invite each person to speak for 1 minute. Please summarise your statement and bear in mind that we have read the actual statement as they were published for councillors, so the Mayor and the public have read them in advance. So speak to them rather than read them. Thank you. So first, I see that we have Suzanne Audrey. Does Suzanne have a microphone? Do we have microphones? Just on the way. On the way. Okay. So I think there's quite a lot of people outside, and maybe that's what's causing a bit of a delay. Hopefully the microphones will get to you. So it's just... Thank you. Perfect. I'd be very bad on radio because you can't have any white noise. I'd have to keep talking until the microphone gets to you. There you are, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it working? Yes. The result of the governance referendum was conclusive and in favour of the committee system. And I think this offers an opportunity to improve Bristol's local democracy. I've suggested in my statement a citizens' assembly as a way of engaging people from across the city. And I did that because the Deputy Mayor Councillor Asher Craig and our current Lord Mayor organised a very successful citizens' assembly, and I wondered if that could be a model. But there may be other ways under consideration. I've written here that I look forward to the answer to my question from Councillor Holland, but everything looks a bit thin on the ground down there, so I don't know if I will. But thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Do we have Emma Green? Speak about the Clean Air Zone.
Yeah, thanks. You have our statement, so I want to use this brief moment to highlight how this time is pivotal for climate justice in Bristol. As you probably all know, every year 300 people are disabled and die due to Bristol's dirty air. So action is vital, but it must centre the most disadvantaged, not add yet another barrier for disabled people. The current plans likely will. Many could be trapped in their homes or be driven deeper into poverty. I work in my day job on the Community Climate Action Project for disabled people, and over the last 2 years I've been really heartened by the support from the council and many councillors here. I think Bristol could be a leader on both transition and just transition, but climate justice isn't words, it's action. And it's an attitude you have to carry into everything. So please, let's put weight behind the words and make Bristol's air fair for everyone.
Thank you so much. Is Tom here? Well, we'll go down and maybe you might come later. Sean Ellis-Thomas. No Sean? Okay. Do we have Leslie Powell? Okay. What about Jen Smith? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm one of the people who's experienced covert surveillance referenced in this evening's Golden Motion. I've had my online activities unlawfully spied upon by the council on various occasions. Officers collated this data, shared this with third parties, but won't share it with me. The report the council prepared for People's Scrutiny Commission was not only a whitewash, it contained libellous accusations against me. Since then, the council has amended the report, but has failed to issue an apology to me for the defamation. The council refuses to respond to a subject access request I made in August, refuses to respond to a complaint I made about not getting a response to the subject access request, and freedom of information requests in Bristol is another opportunity for the council to fail to comply with data laws. The council know the data it has on me is extensive, and it means I will take them to the Investigatory Powers Tribunal in response to their conduct regarding RIPA. But I'll be doing that anyway, even without the data they won't supply me with. And you already know that I'm going to be doing that because you spy on me. Human rights violations are happening in Bristol and can happen to anyone just for telling the truth about systemic injustice.
Thank you, Jen. Do we have Jill Tarleton? No. Anne Hughes Devereux. I didn't see it. Sorry, okay. My apologies, bad eyesight. Jill.
planted, there's nowhere left for them to go. So when we stop this, we should insist that any development involving the loss of any tree at all should be rejected with no exceptions, because trees are absolutely essential for future climate resilience, and without them our city centre will be unlivable.
Thank you, Jill. And now I think we have Anne Hughes-Devereux.
So long as we build luxury apartments in the city centre, wealthy Londoners will continue to buy them up. We will have concreted over all of our green spaces and felled every tree to address London's housing crisis, not Bristol's. We need to be smarter about increasing housing supply to those in most need by reducing the number of unoccupied properties, repurposing vacant offices and retail space, only building on genuine brownfield sites, building the 13,500 homes currently with planning permission, and focusing on genuine affordable housing, not luxury apartments for the wealthy. When the WECA strategy is complete, developments such as the projected 6,500 homes at Filton Airfield can be included in Bristol housing supply. Therefore, we are sacrificing Bristol's ecology and climate resilience to provide luxury city centre apartments for London commuters, rather than solving the housing crisis sustainability.
Thank you. Do we have Professor John Talton?
Okay, thank you. Bristol's declared climate and ecological emergencies are supported by appropriate planning policies in the local plans, such as BCS 6, BCS 9, BCS 13, DM 15, DM 17, and DM 19. Some might think that because the local plan is old, these policies can be considered out of date in the presumption in favour of sustainable development. This is not true. Policies can only be considered out of date if they are no longer in line with national policies, and the green policies present in the local plan are entirely consistent with the latest iteration of the National Planning Policy Framework. In fact, these policies have been strengthened nationally. Therefore, now and in the future, developments need to comply with all of these green policies to be considered sustainable and consistent with the declared emergencies. Urgent action is needed if the city is to avert the catastrophic effects of climate breakdown, and we have the tools, but only if we choose to use them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anita Bennett.
Bristol is one of the UK's most vulnerable cities to flooding, with already 1,300 homes at risk. This will double with climate change. So how can this council even contemplate more planning applications for 10,000 more homes on flood zones? Baltic Wharf doesn't even have a safe evacuation route, but the council's Gorham Homes is pressing on regardless of the risks to residents, with our money. Even worse are the harebrained plans for huge developments on St. Philip's Marsh and the harbour side. We're at risk because of the huge tidal surges that come up through the Severn and squeeze at the narrowest point by Nash's Point. Why these reckless building projects? Do councillors on the two planning committees not have children and grandchildren to consider? How bizarre is the latest? We now need £81 million to build flood defences. So the logic goes, let's give overseas developers more planning permissions for dangerous homes because they might just pay for flood defences afterwards, after it's too damn late. Come clean, be honest for a change. You have a mayor's fund, there's lots of ways of raising money creatively. We ask councillors of all parties who sit on these two planning committees to look long and hard and examine your consciences before making our beautiful city even more dangerous.
Thank you.
Building on flood zones. Thank you.
The next statement is from the Lesbians' Rights Alliance. Do we have somebody to speak to that statement?
Thank you. Men who call themselves trans women claim that they can be lesbians. They say that lesbians can have a penis. These men who retain their male genitals coerce young lesbians into having sex with them. This is sexual assault and rape. And transgender ideology continues to assert that men can be lesbians. The council must recognise that this is a nonsense. Lesbians are same-sex attracted women and girls. In order to meet the legal requirements of the Equality Act, the council must start supporting and safeguarding lesbians. It must also stop supporting the dangerous notion that young lesbians are born in the wrong body and are really men. Teachers must not be sanctioned for refusing to propagate transgender ideology. Please read our documented statement carefully and note our demands. As my T-shirt says, a lesbian is a woman who loves other women. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Susan Sadie Hackett. Is she here?
Hello. The US Department of Agriculture. So are the green lights? I have to talk extra fast, do I? The US Department of Agriculture states one single mature tree has the same cooling effect as 10 room-sized air conditioning units. Surely then, cutting down any mature inner city tree is tantamount to massively increasing city centre overheating and putting lives at risk. The problem in inner city centres is the heat island effect, which can exacerbate a heat wave by 12% in cities that are already warming 29 degrees faster than rural areas. It seems the plan is to increase Bristol's desperately needed tree coverage, yet allowing the cutting down of inner city mature trees and only planting saplings in the suburbs where they are least needed makes no sense. Urban heating is also killing urban trees now. We are reaching a tipping point.
Thank you.
Inner city areas will be unlivable if no action is taken immediately on this undeniably clear evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a representative of Barbie here? Yes, thank you. Do you want to speak to your statement, please?
Is this coming up in the petition?
It's a separate thing. The petition is the next. It's a further item in the agenda. You've put in a public statement.
We'll wait for the petition. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of the statements where people had indicated that they were coming to attend. I'm now going to move on to questions. So we have questions. First question is we received 18 questions from 16 members of the public. 8 of those indicated that they wish to attend. I'll try to cover as many questions as possible in the next 15 minutes. It may not be possible for everyone to speak, so we ask for patience as we run through the questions in order. When I call on you, please read your question out and we will try to show the question on the screen. The Mayor will then reply verbally. Following the response from the Mayor, you will be invited to ask a supplementary question. So the first question is from Mia Clement. Please, can you ask a question? Are they here? No? No, Mia? Okay. So the second question is from Suzanne Audrey, and as referenced earlier, the question is for Councillor Holland to answer.
Yes, thank you very much. That's nice to see you, Councillor Holland. I thought maybe you weren't going to be able to get here. So it was just, could you please give an update on the ways in which you are or you will be involving citizens in the work of the cross-party committee shaping the new committee system?
Thanks, Suzanne, and apologies for not being here at the beginning of the meeting. We've been in Weston working with the ICS, the Integrated Care System, on their strategy all day. Lovely day to be in Weston. The cross-party working group is reporting to OSM at its meeting on the 27th, is it? Yes, 27th, so a week on Thursday. And the report, which will be out on Thursday, a week before that meeting, includes an appendix on the engagement strategy. And so all of the information will be out there then. But one of the things I can tell you is that the email address for anybody in the city to say anything about what they think about the committee system is now live, and that is committee system. I'm looking at Jenny, yes, committee system at bristol.gov.uk. So, but when you see the OSM report on Thursday, you'll see that engagement strategy outlined in there.
Suzanne, you have a second question, which is about international travel policy, and I presume that's to the Mayor.
Oh, it's still on. Sorry, it was. Do I get a supplementary to Helen?
Oh, you do, yes, I beg your pardon.
I just wondered, will there be, but you may be saying this in your report, I was just wondering, will there be sort of the agenda and minutes and various papers and things put in one place for the public to look at? Is that one of the plans as we go forward?
The agenda of the
committee.
Of the working group?
Yeah, the working group.
Right. No, I think the terms of reference of the working group have meant that we have been able to work over the summer, and we've been working very hard and full on, and it's had full support of the cross-party membership of that those meetings have been private meetings, but once we get the OSM report out there, we're expecting that to trigger a great deal more conversation across the city, and we welcome that.
That's great, thank you very much. I'm happy for my question to be answered in writing by the Mayor, given that there are lots of other people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. The next question is from Stephen McNamara. Is Stephen here? Can we get a microphone to Stephen?
This is a question for Councillor Cheney. You have a named responsibility for governance. Please explain on what basis the trans rights or human rights motion was considered at the 5th of July full council meeting without an equality impact assessment, given that the decision impacts upon people with protected characteristics under the Equality Act.
Can I just say that the questions are to the Mayor, unless there's a particular agreement, and the Mayor is happy to answer this question.
Nice to see you back in the Council House, City Hall, as it is now. Not what it was named when you were here, but great to see you. But as you know from your experience, motions and the business of full council is between the Lord Mayor. It's the Lord Mayor's meeting, and obviously the conversations leading up to that meeting with party group leaders. So it's not something that I or Craig has responsibility for in the content. That's down to them.
Question, just between me and you, Mayor. In retrospect, don't you think this would have been better dealt with by means of a scrutiny committee so that all the evidence could be considered, rather than just allowing it to be dealt with so briefly at a full council meeting, just between me and you?
Well, again, you know, and actually this kind of sheds some light, as I know you're savvy and having been a monitoring officer yourself will know, scrutiny's business is up to scrutiny. I don't shape what happens in full council. I don't shape what happens in scrutiny. That's up to the councillors.
To the Mayor, do you believe that a biological man can literally change their sex and become a biological woman?
Okay. This isn't about me and what I think. This is about you and the city and the way it functions. So again, I'm not entering into these kind of binary discussions. That's between you and the council chamber, you know, as a city, for the kind of debates the city's going to have.
Full council decided this. I would like full council to consider whether or not they believe, following the submissions from the Lesbian Rights Alliance, whether or not some lesbians have a penis and testicles. Not for the Mayor, a general question.
I don't think we can. You can't. No. No, I think we're getting into the elements of the realm of rhetoric at that point. I'm going to move on to...
Maybe you should ask my wife.
Anna.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We have a question from Anna Swift. Is Anna here? Temporary pavement licences.
Thank you. My question's changed slightly since September. I'm the owner and manager of the Garden of Easton, a restaurant cafe on St Mark's Road in Easton. When we were granted a pavement licence just over a year ago, we decided to put a lot of effort into producing an outside eating area that we thought would enhance and enliven the street. We planted olive trees, fresh herbs, flowers with vine leaves and grapes, and we've been blown away by the public's response since building it, with some people saying they even walk a different way to work. We've had many people say that their street feels safer, and there are a lot of clinically vulnerable people in Easton who are still shielding and feel that the Garden of Easton is one of the only places in the area that they can go to. We feel that its removal would be a huge step backwards. Bristol could be the city that could find ways around this and be at the forefront of solutions which improve our environment with greenery, particularly in such a special locals shopping street. Last year, we all filled in, as businesses and individuals, a questionnaire which focused on greening up and improving the environment. What we've done is a step forward in this direction. Surely its removal is a step backwards, as well as a financial blow to an already struggling sector. We understand that the issue lies with the Highways Department, and we've been consistently told that it's not that nothing can be done, but rather that they don't have the resources or time to do anything about it. We would be happy to pay for any works that were necessary. Please let us know how we could do one of these things: extend the pavement at our own expense, get a temporary traffic regulation order, or get emergency traffic regulation order.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So we in Bristol, we love some of the things that have happened in the city. We would have preferred it not to have been COVID, to have been a catalyst for it, but it has presented a number of great opportunities to introduce bus gates, pedestrianise areas, widen pavements as well. A number of authorities, including ourselves, are taking this opportunity to extend the issuing of temporary pavement licences in line with the revised Business and Planning Act. And what this will do is it will allow businesses currently using pavement licences to extend their use until September 2023. But we do operate within a law. We are not the law. And whilst provisions under that Business and Planning Act around pavement licensing have been extended for another year and are likely to be made permanent through the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill currently passing through Parliament, the government as yet have not extended provisions allowing the carriageway to be used for hospitality purposes. And this actually means that no new temporary traffic orders can be made that will cover carriageway use in locations such as parking bays and loading bays. We're sympathetic, as I said, we love what's happened, and we moved incredibly quickly as an authority to support businesses to have that outside provision. But we have to work within the restrictions and the opportunities presented by central government, over which we have very little local discretion.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Anna?
Temporary traffic orders are difficult, but I do wonder why Liverpool has issued emergency traffic regulation orders, and also why we can't extend the pavements.
Well, if they found a way of doing it, then we'll find out what they've done and find a way of doing it. But our understanding at the moment is what's available to us is what we are providing, that year extension on pavements, but we don't have the liberty to move into the carriageways. But more than happy to look at what routes, if other authorities have found a way, then we'll look at that and we'll exploit it.
Thank you. Do we have Helen Powell? Question about FOI requests. Is Helen Powell here? Yes.
Relates to a decision from the Information Commissioner that was handed down at the end of August that specifically says that the Council's approach to dealing with FOI requests relating to Stoke Lodge was not a lawful one for it to take, and the fact that we have recently discovered that it's continuing to take this approach anyway in relation to other requests.
Yeah, that's a slightly different interpretation to the one I'm aware of, in that the ICO decision relates to a single request, not the council's position in relation to all your requests. And so we do acknowledge the ICO's decision notice and are in the process of responding to it. So, you know, that will play itself out. We haven't had any new Stoke Lodge requests received by the City Council since the date of the ICO decision. And just to get that sequence in place, the most recent request we had was on the 8th of August, and the ICO decision was on the 22nd of August. So we are in line with responding to their their decision notes.
I apologise for contradicting you, but actually the internal review...
Is this your supplementary question?
Yes, I understand, happened within recent weeks, subsequent to the 22nd of August when the decision came out. And the decision specifically tells you that We Love Stoke Lodge is not a campaign that seeks to harass or burden the council. It's a campaign to protect open green space and therefore doesn't trigger the vexatious request exemption. So my question is, it's baffling to some extent that the council would, having been told that that's not a proper approach to take, continue to take it anyway. Is that a matter of business as usual, or is it only when there are documents relating to Stoke Lodge?
So, I mean, two things I would say. One is, you'll forgive me for working with the legal team here and taking direction from them rather than your own, and I'm sure that those conversations will happen, you know, outside, but this is the direction that I've had from the legal team. You know, I would go back to things I've said previously as well about everything that's happened with Stoke Lodge, and that it's ended up in a situation where all this legal activity has happened. I think there was an opportunity early doors for what was a very challenging situation for a group of adults to come together and work out a resolution. I think one of the reasons that opportunity for that resolution and that compromise to come about was missed was because of the adversarial and unreasonable nature of the approaches made by parties to each other. And I don't think it's a high point of showing young people how to deal with challenging situations in the city. And it's unfortunate that it's come to this. But I would say I am not in a position to offer a solution for the consequences of that approach to trying to get compromise in the city now.
Does sound rather as if we're being punished for
I
exercising
think we're going to.
rights.
I think that is the questions. In fact, that is all of the questions finished today. The time allotted has now been used up, and we're going to move on with the meeting. So, agenda item 7. Petitions notified by councillors. There were none. There are no petitions received by councillors. So on to agenda item 8, which is the first petition debate. And this is enable group to address sewage pollution in the Avon. This petition has reached the 3,500 signature threshold to qualify for a full council debate. 20 minutes is the maximum time allowed for this item. The petition organiser will be permitted up to 5 minutes to present the petition and its objectives. We will then proceed to the councillor debate. I'll also ask the Mayor or the relevant Cabinet member to respond at the end of the debate. As a reminder, this is not an interactive discussion involving the public. The issues raised in the petition and the comments of members during the debate will be referred to the Mayor and to relevant Cabinet members for a response. The petition organisers are Becca Blease and Eva Perrin. Please, may I ask one of them or both of them collectively to use their 5 minutes to introduce the petition. Who's going to speak to it? There you are. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start your 5 minutes? Okay, once they have the mic.
Thank you. Many of you will have seen the disturbing statistics and images of sewage pollution threatening the UK's coastlines and inland waters. This pollution not only endangers wildlife, but has been described by the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, as a serious public health issue. Sadly, the River Avon is also afflicted. According to the Environment Agency, over the past 2 years, Wessex Water has discharged untreated sewage over 52,000 times. The cumulative duration of all these individual discharges is 44 years in just 2 years. Fortunately, water quality is mentioned in Bristol One City's ecological emergency strategy. A target is set for all waterways to have excellent water quality by 2030. One of the ways the council plans to do this is to support and enable action by citizens, and this is where our campaign comes in. We are a group of volunteers trying to apply for designated bathing water status for Bristol's most popular outdoor swimming spot, a stretch of the River Avon at Eastwood Farm Nature Reserve or Conham River Park, depending on which side of the river you're on. With this status, the Environment Agency would regularly sample the water to check that it is safe for bathing. The EA would also be responsible for investigating the sources of pollution and implementing water quality improvement measures. We've gathered almost all the evidence required for an application. The only remaining requirement is to obtain permission of the landowner, which is the council. However, when I asked the council to support our application, the council refused due to a bylaw prohibiting swimming in the harbour. Despite this spot being some distance away from the harbour and quite different in nature. We did have a video to play, but I'm not sure if you received it. There are over 600 beaches in England and Wales with bathing status, several lakes, and now more recently 2 rivers, the River Wharfe and the River Thames in Oxford. Bristol could have the third. This morning, Eva and I joined Surfers Against Sewage at DEFRA's offices in London to hand in their national petition to the Secretary of State, calling on the government to create 200 river bathing waters by 2030. To clarify, what we are suggesting is not a new bathing site. Local people have swum here for generations. During the pandemic, many people depended on swimming here for their well-being, and according to a public survey we ran last year, they continue to do so to exercise, socialise, boost their mood, and feel connected to nature. And you can see why. It is rare for a city to have such a green and beautiful space that is free to access and close to the city centre. Unfortunately, there aren't really any good options for outdoor swimming in Bristol. The only places that are regularly monitored for pollution are Henley's Lake, which is a private members-only lake with a very long waiting list, or you have to drive out to Clevedon. I'll now hand over to Eva, who has led our water sampling programme.
Thank you. Water quality data for our Bristol Avon is sparse, with the most recently available official Environment Agency data being from 2019, and prior to that, 2016. In both instances, this stretch of river failed to meet both good ecological and chemical status under the Water Framework Directive. This infrequency and unreliability of this data prevents us from truly understanding the health of the river. As such, the water quality monitoring programme that we have undertaken represents the most in-depth and up-to-date publicly available data for this site. As a part of this programme, we've undertaken weekly water samples at Conham for the last 2 summers, which have been analysed at Wessex Water's accredited analytical laboratory, as well as my university's academic research laboratory, as part of my ongoing PhD investigating freshwater pollution in rivers in the UK. These results have shown that at times the river can be safe for bathing, but at others it is dangerously polluted with high concentrations of harmful human pathogens, Escherichia coli, known as E. coli, and intestinal enterococci, both of which are associated with untreated sewage. Whilst we have received overwhelmingly positive feedback for sharing these results with the thousands of river users in our community, we are a volunteer group and we simply do not have the same resources or capacity the EA would have in investigating this pollution. Designated bathing water status is currently the only tool available for us to get this crucial support to monitor and regulate pollution. Besides the sampling we've done, we have also developed a sewage alerting system with Wessex Water so that the community is made aware as soon as possible when there has been a discharge in this stretch of the river. Unfortunately, we had to post 2 sewage alerts just yesterday morning. While the bylaw remains in place and we're unable to apply for bathing status, we are limited in what we can do to improve public safety. After all, there are always some risks associated with wild swimming, whether it's in the sea or a river. But with effective messaging, these risks can be mitigated. If we remove the prohibition of swimming at this site, with effective outreach, we could improve public awareness and ensure the dissemination of vital educational information across our large and wide-reaching platform of river users.
As Eva mentioned, Wessex Water has supported our water sampling and our sewage alerts for Conham, and the fact that our petition gained over 5,200 signatures in a month proves there is also considerable public support for officially monitoring the water quality at this site. And really, that's all we're asking for. We are asking the council to enable us to do more for public safety, more for the health of the river and the wildlife that it supports, and to help the council with its own target of achieving 100% excellent quality waterways in just 8 years' time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd now like to call on Councillor Katja Hornchen to speak on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Members, this is a beautiful spot on the River Avon. One side the Conham River Park, the opposite side and in my ward, Eastwood Farm. It is rich in wildlife. Since the pandemic, it has become a favourite outdoor space for the city's residents. Leisure pursuits of this part of the river include river cruises, rowing clubs, wildlife spotting, and of course swimming, despite swimming being prohibited there. The river and the land around it belong to the City Council, to the people of Bristol. A very rare occurrence, I am told, as it seems most riverbeds in the UK are privately owned and deny access. The people of Bristol have spoken, 5,200 of them. They would like to use this river for swimming. However, we know that there was 150,000 hours of raw sewage discharged by Wessex Water last year. Undoubtedly, a lot of it made its way into the River Avon. Rather than this high amount of discharge being an exception, it seems our government has allowed the private water companies to not invest in proper infrastructure for our growing cities, but rather to dump the sewage into our rivers and seas. By removing the bylaw and giving this part of the river designated bathing water status, it would require the Environment Agency to monitor the water on a regular basis, and more importantly, if there is a consistent pollution, investigating the perpetrators. As the planet heats up, more people will want to cool off in the water. With the ever-increasing pressure on household budgets, pursuits that cost nothing will become more popular and should be our right. However, I would like to put a note of caution. The pollution in the river is not the only danger to swimmers. The river banks are steep. There are boats large and small. The river is tidal. There is a lack of infrastructure to sustain the visitors, especially on the Eastwood Farm side, which causes stress to the wildlife and the local residents. We all know about the severe pressures to the city's budget, the lack of investment forced on us by austerity. It is my hope that lifting the ban would enable us to work with the local community groups in making the spot a safer place to swim, boat, and enjoy a day out. Personally, I am in favour of growth in good quality life for both wildlife and the residents of Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like now to call on Councillor Fitzjohn to speak.
Conham River Park is a beautiful, popular bathing spot, close enough to walk or cycle from the centre of Bristol. This petition provides compelling evidence of the increasing need to repeal the outdated bylaw passed in 2009 that prohibits swimming in the Bristol docks as well as Conham River Park, and support Conham River Park acquiring designated bathing water status. This would require the Environment Agency to closely monitor and report water quality and bacterial levels at Conham, so people could make their own choice about whether it's safe or not to swim. Surely that's their right. The healthy benefits of mental and physical of wild swimming are well recognised, and it's already being promoted by doctors through social prescribing. I am shocked to find that Wessex Water discharged raw sewage directly into rivers 23,524 times for a total duration of 151,258 hours in 2021. A lot of this in Bristol as well as in Conham. Data suggests that a significant number of combined sewer outflow discharges are not in line with the approved permits. This issue should be taken very seriously by the Council, and Wessex Water and the Environment Agency should be held accountable to their obligations, not accept failure and instead leave it to the Council to ban people from enjoying their environment. Currently, not a single English river is in good ecological health. You can begin to understand why the open water swimming groups, the Rivers Trust, Service Against Sewage, the Angling Trust and other groups are so angry with the water industry and the Environment Agency. For these reasons, I request that you support the amendment of the 2009 bylaw and Conham designated bathing water status application. Let's protect this inner city nature reserve for future generations to enjoy and take action on the ecological emergency that this Council declared 2 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzjohn. I'd now like to ask Councillor Michelat from the Conservatives to speak.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. My group is wholly supportive of this campaign. Indeed, we find its stated aims very difficult to oppose. I imagine few in this chamber would argue against tackling river pollution, especially sewage discharge. This is something that should be enthusiastically and rigorously pursued. It is a good in and of itself, irrespective of any associated or tangential benefits which flow from improving water quality. As the famous saying goes, a river doesn't just carry water, it carries life. In addition, striving for higher environmental standards are supposed to be declared corporate values and objectives. My Lord Mayor, we are disappointed and perplexed by the officious stance adopted by the authority as landowner, which is acting to block the aspirations of these campaigners. I understand the stretch of the Avon in question, for which the Conham River Bathing Group want to enhance protection from DEFRA, has been used for generations for wild and open water swimming. This is not going to stop, whatever we do or say here today. We regard the reasoning given for obstructing attempts to take forward the application for designated bathing water status to be somewhat artful and excessively hidebound. The stated grounds of opposition that swimming at this location cannot be condoned because it's prohibited by bylaws covering the docks and waterways are ultimately unconvincing. It cannot be beyond the wit of man to amend this specific clause, Part 5, subsection 49, to allow this activity to take place, for example, at the individual's own risk, if there are major concerns around legal liability of death or damage. Besides which, the restriction cited is not an absolute bar. The Harbour Master retains discretion to give consent or permission to swimmers in certain circumstances. I suspect that as more use is made of the docks for leisure and sporting pastimes, there will be a need at some point in the future to look again at this provision in order to create additional exceptions, exemptions and exclusions from its operation. My Lord Mayor, as I've already suggested, it must be possible to enable this group's application to go forward purely on the basis of environmental protection without explicitly condoning actions which might, theoretically, create problems around maintaining safe navigational waterways. We support the petitioners and hope the Mayor will work with them to find a mutually beneficial solution to the current impasse. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Can I now call on Councillor Varney to speak?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Many congratulations to the petitioners on getting this debate. You have the full support of the Bristol Liberal Democrats. We would also go further and support a designated swimming area in the harbour itself. I live a short cycle ride from Conham River Park. It's a beautiful stretch of the river flowing through a deep wooded valley. On warm sunny days, the river is particularly inviting and generations of local people have swum there. Unfortunately, water quality in our rivers has deteriorated. In 2019, the Environment Agency rated only 14% of rivers as being in good condition. Now, as we have heard, there are none. Every river in England is polluted beyond legal limits. It's a national disgrace. And to quote who I believe is still currently our Prime Minister, Liz Truss, this is a disgrace. Raw sewage is pumped into our waterways as a matter of course rather than exception. Liberal Democrat research has discovered that many sewage monitors are faulty or simply not installed at all, and so lots of discharges go unrecorded. Here in Bristol, it has been reported that around 50% of people, 50, who swim in the River Avon at Conham become ill afterwards. Unfortunately, we have a dysfunctional government which is unwilling to legislate against the perpetrators. It seems strange to me that a party that claims to love this country so much is so willing to trash it. The 2009 bylaw that prohibits swimming in the river unwittingly supports this current state of affairs, as it means the Environment Agency is not required to test water quality on a regular basis or investigate sources of pollution and prosecute perpetrators. By removing this bylaw and establishing designated bathing water status, we can ensure that the water is properly monitored, poor water quality is investigated, and the public, crucially, have the information they need regarding water quality before entering the river. The current administration in Bristol claims it wants excellent water quality in 100% of our waterways by 2030. However, by maintaining the 2009 bylaw and rejecting the application by Conham Bathing for designated bathing water status, it is making this more difficult to achieve. Now, I know the Bristol Labour Party likes working with the Tories to stop progressive policies, but I hope on this occasion they will see sense and join us in supporting the petitioners. Finally, on Sunday, I attended the premiere of Future Harbour, a film by local business person Johnny Palmer, who's in the room. Hi, Johnny. Johnny's campaigned to create a safe swimming area in the Cumberland Basin. It was an inspiring film, especially Johnny's trip to Copenhagen, where we saw thousands of swimmers enjoying their harbour facilities. I would like to ask the Mayor to be more ambitious for Bristol, work with Johnny and his team, and catch up with many other harbour cities around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Varney. Thank you. Councillor Hopkins, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. There are two issues here. Firstly, the inefficiency of central government, which is a disgrace, and this problem has been building up for a number of years. There needs to be proper enforcement, and there needs to be a requirement upon the water companies to behave as if they cared about the environment, and they need to be made to behave. Secondly, given that problem, which is there, and people in this chamber can't actually change that, we need to be in a position where they're not aided and abetted by the administration in this council, which unfortunately in this case they are, because what we require is a flexibility and an adjustment in the policy, in the bylaw policy. There's nothing to prevent this administration actually doing that. It's perfectly sensible to actually do that, and it would allow then at least to be proper monitoring. We know that there'd still be pollution, but it would allow those campaigning against the pollution to have a few more pieces of information and to have more data to add to their campaign. So this administration must listen to this petition and they must act upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. This is the end of the debate, and I now would invite Mayor Rees to respond to what he's heard here today in the chamber. Okay. Thank you. I now ask Council to note the issues raised in the petition, together with the comments of members during the debate at this meeting. This matter will now be referred to the Mayor and to the relevant Cabinet member for consideration, and to issue a response to the petition organiser. So, agenda item 8A, which is another petition debate, and this is road usage for hospitality. This petition has reached to the 3,500 signature threshold to qualify for a full council debate. 20 minutes is the maximum time allowed for this item. The petition organiser will be permitted up to 5 minutes to present the petition and its objectives. We'll then proceed to the full council debate. And again, I will ask the Mayor at the end or the relevant Cabinet member to respond at the end of the debate. As a reminder, this is not interactive. We will listen to the councillors speak on it. The issues raised in the petition and the comments of the members during the debate will be referred to the Mayor and the relevant Cabinet member for a response. The petition organiser is Barbie, the Bristol Association of Restaurants, Bars and Independent Establishments. Please may I ask Brendan Murphy to present the petition. You have 5 minutes to speak to it.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for including our petition on road usage for hospitality for discussion today. You will have seen over 4,500 signatures, over 700 comments and lots of statements. I think it's important for me to read it out again. This statement is made by Barbie, the British Association of Restaurants, Bars and Independents in Bristol, which represents over 450 venues and 11,000 hospitality workers across the region in regard to road usage for hospitality businesses. We are extremely concerned for those venues that sit outside specific pedestrianised or semi-pedestrianised zones with no pub garden or outdoor space, and where the pavement is too narrow to put tables and chairs. They've been utilising parking bays and on parts of the road, but are now told they have to remove this before the end of October. We are urging the Mayor and his administration to use all of their powers to protect these businesses and jobs by invoking traffic regulation orders, temporary TROs, emergency TROs, and even bylaws through until September 2023, in line with the extension of off-sales for venues. Whilst powers can be handed down nationally from government, this can also be a local authority decision if they were so minded. The recent letter issued by Bristol City Council, called Outdoor Hospitality Structures and Licences, has caused widespread confusion, as it stated the following: all businesses, including cafes, pubs, bars and restaurants, must ask the council for permission to have tables, chairs and other pavement furniture or structures on the pavement or road. Businesses with existing structures will be given time to retrospectively apply for the necessary licences or planning permission. That was greeted with great cheer by most venues. However, this does not apply to any businesses that are using the road outside designated zones. Bristol City Council has announced a cost of living crisis. Now is not the time to further jeopardise independent Bristol hospitality businesses who have worked hard to survive the pandemic and keep staff in their jobs. Putting this simply, we are asking for some parking bays to be suspended in order for independent hospitality businesses to survive. We've been told that this is not possible, yet temporary traffic restriction order was passed on the 4th of March 2022 to facilitate reallocation of road space to enable social distancing from 11 AM until 11 PM outside of the pedestrianised and semi-pedestrianised areas. The council departments knew that this decision was coming. They should have acted earlier. Sasha Lord, the Nighttime Economy Advisor to Greater Manchester, will be speaking tomorrow, and I urge those in the administration or the officers to watch this about how important the nighttime economy is to the recovery of the high street and local economy. There are a number of campaigns being run in Bristol to help the high streets. This can start with the hospitality industry. Without urgent intervention, hospitality will be decimated this winter. Also, for venues that have removed their canopies to improve them for the winter are now being told they are no longer allowed to put them back up. Where is the common sense here? We have one side of Cotton Hill that is pedestrianised, where their canopies can stay up, and the other side, where they've taken them down to improve them, are not allowed to put them back up without planning permission. Perhaps this can provide some extra revenue to the council with the cost-cutting going on currently, as all venues are happy to pay. Can we please be assured that the Mayor and the administration will use all of their powers to suspend some parking bays? Jobs and businesses are on the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I first call on Councillor Marley Bennett to speak for the Labour Group?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank Barbie for bringing this important petition to the Council and for the other contributions that we've heard tonight. It's crucial we recognise the importance of hospitality, not just in contributing to the local economy and creating jobs, but in providing the venues that makes Bristol the best city to live in. Amidst the difficult economic situation, not helped by the self-inflicted damage from Westminster, many business owners will hold understandable concerns about their viability, and the recent announcement that alcohol duty will rise is yet another bitter blow. I know all too well how having outside seating can benefit a business. I've not yet been to every outside seated area in Bristol, but I've completed King Street and have just last night enjoyed a drink sat outside the Seven Stars before a gig. During the COVID pandemic, there was an incredible response from the hospitality sector to adapt to the rules, particularly those restricted inside dining, whilst allowing dining outside. As a council, we rightly acted flexibly to support this, which is why we saw many outside seated areas spring up in a very short space of time. Now, the government has chosen not to renew the rules that mean these structures do now need planning permission and highways approval through a traffic regulation order, TRO. Unfortunately, the council legally cannot grant temporary TROs in the way suggested by the petition, but we will work with businesses where possible. All businesses with existing outside structures have been told they should now apply for retrospective planning permission. I've been assured by the licensing team and highways officers that there will be no enforcement action taken on businesses that are in the process of doing this. Getting the relevant permissions can be a complex process as it requires approval from up to 3 separate regimes: licensing, planning, and if it's on a road, highways. The comms the Council has put out so far has tried to explain this as simply as possible, but I recognise how confusing this can be for business owners who have so many other concerns. This is why we will be producing an overarching guidance document that explains the process clearly. Now we're out of the pandemic, it is right that existing outside structures go through the licensing and planning process. I strongly support reclaiming road space for people, but we also need to have conversations about the use of public space, which the Council pays to maintain, by private businesses, some of whom are installing permanent structures. This is why we need to come up with a policy that acknowledges the benefits these structures bring to hospitality, alongside other considerations, like accessibility and appearance. People with mobility issues should have confidence they'll be able to navigate Bristol's streets without hindrance, and we should be able to ensure the streetscape remains attractive. I'm going to be chairing a working group that comes up with a policy for how the highways team deals with future applications that considers these issues, and I'm grateful to the councillors from other groups who've said they'll sit on this group. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to listen to the hospitality sector and to come up with a policy that works for all of Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now call on Councillor Stafford Townsend to speak on behalf of the Greens, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Barbie. One of the positive lessons that we learnt from the height of the COVID pandemic was the value of community, of the outside, and of reclaiming the space for wider usage than cars. One such great usage was using car and road space for more than just car travel or car storage, using the streets and the roads instead for community use, for hospitality businesses, and providing COVID-safe locations to see our loved ones and much-needed additional income for the businesses during that time. Another thing that the pandemic taught us is the resilience for rapid change when required. We're in a climate emergency, and we must rapidly change our car usage. Recommendation 9 of the Citizens' Assembly was to remove between 3 to 6% of car spaces annually in our city in order to meet the 2030 climate targets. Residents want to see us using our roads differently. And we're in an economic emergency. Businesses, hospitality businesses in particular, are extremely concerned for their livelihoods and those of their staff, and they're providing a really clear solution that the Council does have in its power to provide. We must support and encourage new ways of using our streets to encourage and to support well-run businesses in our city, our local economy, to reclaim our streets as the hearts and lungs of our community. COVID isn't over yet, we know that, and a long and economically hard winter is coming for us. Our hospitality businesses and high streets need us to support them and help them in every possible way. I support this petition and I call on the Council to implement the asks. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd now like to ask Councillor Weston to speak.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor, and thank you and congratulations to the petitioners for gathering their signatures. I'd imagine while you're working, that's no easy task to do as you're trying to make a living. The petition itself, I think, is very good and we support its broad aims. The problem we'll have is how we deliver that practically within the legislative regime in which we work, which Councillor Bennett was talking about. I think it's good that the fact that the payments section of it has been extended, and I do hope, like has been mentioned, that that becomes permanent. It certainly should be. Because hospitality serves us. It's not just us trying to support them, they support us throughout it as well. The important social function that goes with the hospitality trade, the ability to meet with your friends, everything else, is vital from a mental health point of view and as well as the economic. Often we focus on the economic, we don't talk about the mental health side of it. Many of us, when we talk about the lockdowns, we talk about the pandemic, that not seeing your friends for a drink or a coffee was probably the hardest thing. Now, naturally, some of my friends probably don't like me very much, they probably quite enjoyed it, but for me it was quite concerning. So how do we actually bring about the change that is needed? The legislation has shifted, so that will change from the 1st of November. But we do need the operation in place that we can take back part of the road space, part of the payment space where practical, and actually make sure that it serves our communities, the hospitality trade and local residents. You mentioned that working group. We definitely want to be a part of that. We also need to make sure that it has the standards that we want, and I'm glad and I welcome the fact that you're not talking about no enforcement as they go through the process. I would urge the administration to extend that grace period as people find the new equilibrium. I think they're going to want to feed into that new policy as swiftly as possible before they start making large financial expenses at a time when actually they're being hit. So you've already talked about how there'll be a suspension or a grace period. I would roll that as wide as possible as we bed this in. It is so vital for our economic and mental well-being that the night economy and hospitality trade is nurtured with us. So wholeheartedly support the petition, support the aim on it. The question now is how we deliver it for our city so we can support them as they support us. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Classic to speak, please?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. And also I'd like to extend my congratulations to Barbie for getting the signatures on the petition. And similar to Councillor Weston, we broadly support the aims of the petition. During the COVID pandemic, obviously our nighttime economy, our restaurants, our bars were hit very hard by the closures, by the lockdowns. And it was really positive as things opened up again to have that outdoor space as our British weather allowed it to be used. Always a consideration in this country. But as people have said, it is a very valuable part of Bristol's community. It becomes a meeting place for people. It becomes just part of enjoyment of life. And that is something, especially with the cost of living crisis looming this winter, that we really do need to protect. Because once bars close and once that starts to happen, we will really lose what makes this city so vibrant and so brilliant. So we definitely support these aims. But obviously the policies that started during COVID haven't been without flaws, and we do need to make sure that as a city we consider accessibility, especially for disabled people and parents with prams and all of those things. So I'm actually also sitting on the, as it's Tables and Chairs Working Group, as it's so brilliantly named. I look forward to working with the Licensing Committee and with those other councillors to create a very robust policy that really does support Bristol's businesses, Bristol's bars, Bristol's restaurants, and also people of Bristol, so that we can continue to use those businesses and they continue to support our community.
Thank you, Councillor Classic. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you. We also support the principle here contained within the petition. One thing that we would want to bring to everyone's attention is that it's different in different circumstances and different geography. And one thing that we would want the administration to do, as well as not enforcing any planning rules too heavily, which, let's face it, in Bristol, that doesn't happen anyway, on anything with regard to planning enforcement. As well as that, we would want local councillors consulted on how things are actually done, because what works brilliantly in one place might not work in another. So I think in most cases, councillors would be welcoming the progression of outside space entertainment areas, but there will be the odd occasion when it does cause a problem. And I hope that that will be listened to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. I think in previous meetings, Councillor Hopkins, I did ask maybe that if you spoke when you're sitting down, because I don't know if everybody's struggling to hear you, but I think when you're standing up and you move around. Don't be rude. Thank you. So now I think I'd like to ask if Mayor Rees would like to speak, to respond. You okay? Okay, so I suppose one thing I'm minded to say, which is that I was speaking to some officers about the nighttime economy yesterday, and they told me that they'd been over to Dublin, which is, of course, my home city, and I was very proud now, because I must be almost Bristolian, because she told me that a load of people from Dublin are coming over to Bristol to see how we do our nighttime economy so well, because Dublin wants to learn from Bristol. So I had a certain amount of pride in that. Thank you. So thank you, Barbie, for bringing this. I now ask the Council to note the issues raised in the petition together with the comments of members during the debate. And this matter will now be referred to the Mayor and the relevant Cabinet member for consideration, and you will be issued with a response. Thank you. So we are now on to agenda item 9, which is the Corporate Parenting Panel Annual Report, 2021 to 22. This report is for noting. I would like to ask Councillor Asher Craig to move the report, and I suspect that she might have some support in doing that here today. Thank you, Councillor Craig.
I certainly do. Thank you, Lord Mayor. So this is just a reminder. That of our responsibility as corporate parents for over 700 children and over 700 care leavers here in this city. Arguably, the most important thing we do as a local authority. Our corporate parenting panel has a duty to report to full council as to how well we oversee this privilege and this responsibility. The annual corporate parenting report provides a summary of the in-depth reports that have been submitted by council officers to the corporate parenting panel, covering the period 2021 to 2022. This includes a summary of the progress for children in care and care leavers, aligned to the 8 corporate parenting priorities, including health, fostering and sufficiency, children's homes, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, adoption, education and disabled children. During 21-22, we've seen progress in the rates of children living in foster care, the investment into children's homes, which has seen significant improvements, and an increase in fees to attract and retain loving and caring foster carers. The report also provides a summary of the co-production activity undertaken with our children and young people, and their views on the services that they receive and how they would like to see these services develop in the future. It takes a city to raise our children, and we all need to take pride and take collective responsibility to champion children in care and care leavers at every opportunity. We need to create a city where our children belong. Next year, we're looking at how we can further support our children and young people by introducing care experience as a locally protected characteristic, increasing the number and diversity of foster carers to provide loving homes for our children, further engagement with our city partners, and working with our health colleagues to improve outcomes for children in care and care leavers. Now, it wouldn't be, we need to hear the voice of children and young people, and I'm delighted to be joined by Tavoy, who is going to be speaking on behalf of Bristol Care Leavers. So, over to you, Tavoy.
Hello, I'm not really sure how to use one of these. So this is a message from Bristol's Care Experienced Children and Young People to all corporate parents. So it says, "Dear corporate parents, we are children, we just happen to be in care. We don't want to be stereotyped and we don't want special treatment. Please don't make assumptions about us. What you need to know is we are all different and you can't all put us in one category. What you need to also know is that we would like help and support. What we want for our future is help to get the education that we want and for you to have high expectations for us. Help us to get right housing when we need it, help us to get work experience, jobs, and help us to find out what we can do, and have opportunities to access activities to meet other people. We will know that you have taken on our views. If you ask questions to understand us, stay in touch with us and tell us what you are doing about our views." And that's from the Children in Care Council for Bristol. I also have one more letter to read. This one says, "Dear corporate parents, we are Bristol Care Leavers. We would like to be heard and valued. We want to have a voice. We are all unique in our different ways. We may have similar paths, but we have different approaches to reaching our similar goal, to be successful in life. We need to be genuinely supported like a family. And we need you to care about us as individual people, to show us that you care not just because you're paid to do so, but that we also might get second chances, which other people, young people, would automatically get. We need positive reinforcement, so please help to build us up. We might also need a helping hand to achieve and to thrive. That's from the Care Leavers Unite Bristol. So, thank you.
So hold on. She's not finished. Okay, so Tavoy is not actually finished. She just has a poem that she would like to recite to you before we sit down.
So I wrote this poem actually. I was asked to read it today, so I hope you'll really enjoy it. It's called War Dance. It goes, I dance when I'm at war. I flourish in the face of adversity, and no enemy enjoys being my enemy. Before they turned, they didn't realize I could be so cold, you see. I may not look it, but I love to war dance, the type where we don't hold hands, where cold tree words pierce my enemies into trance. As I watch their faces become blank, my enemies love to war dance too, but they're never as good as me, and you're only as good as you. I clear battlefields upon battlefields, turning enemies into admirers. Many of them have never faced defeat so sweet. And in return, they adore me for the fighter I turn out to be. After we dance, they gaze upon my fire tree, and their resentment becomes set free. There you go. That's the end of that.
Well, that's the highlight of all our day, I think. Thank you so much. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now I would like to invite Councillor Massey to speak.
Well, how can I follow that? I mean, you know, that's asking quite a lot, really. But congratulations on your speech. That was really very good. Okay, I've only got 3 minutes, I know, so this is going to be a really quick trip through the report. But first of all, I'd like to remind all of you here that you are corporate parents, every single one of you. So that means that we all have a duty to do the very best we can for all our children in care. Councillor Craig has already spoken to the report, so I'll just comment on a few items. It's good news that fewer of our children in care experienced several moves when they entered care than those of our statistical neighbours, so there's more stability in the placements. However, it's not just important that children in care have a positive experience of being in care, but that when they leave school, they're given appropriate advice and help to move forward with their lives. It's good to see in the report that in 2021-22, we had 41 of our care leavers enrolled on higher education courses up to and including at master's level. The higher education route is not necessarily attractive to all our young people, and we need to ensure that all options are open to them and that we provide appropriate support to enable them to follow whatever career they want to undertake. There are still some problems with obtaining reliable data on school attendance, mainly due to incompatible systems between councils. That's a surprise. But this is being worked on, so it is essential, as it is so essential, to be able to monitor attendance. The impact of the COVID pandemic is still being felt, but there is a clear plan to support children in care in relation to how this has affected their relationships with their family networks and also on their education. Care leavers working with Bernardo's presented their experience of health provision to the CCG, and their comments have since been discussed by the executive directors and actions taken as a result. With regard to adoption, it's still a low number compared to that of a few years ago, Out of 23 children placed for adoption in 2021-22, 12 were adopted and another 6 have a placement order. Unfortunately, it is still hard to find adopters, particularly for older children, those with complex health needs and those from ethnic minority backgrounds. Unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are still arriving here, and the largest group is from Afghanistan, as 11% of the total asylum seekers originally came from that country. It's difficult for us to imagine just how stressful that must be for a young person to make such a long journey to an unknown country. As councillors, we have formally pledged to do the very best we can for all our children in care. Can we now take this further in practical ways? This is not to take away from any of the valuable professional advice open to children in care, but to complement it. The suggestion is to make use of all your many talents and wide-ranging experiences.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up soon, Councillor Massey.
Yep. Help could come from offering support with writing a job application, working on interview skills for older children, or any of the many skills and experience you possess, even to helping a child with a specific hobby. With a huge range of different experiences and skills present in the chamber, you have an awful lot to offer our children in care.
Thank you.
Perhaps we could... Right.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. I'd now like to ask Councillor Mack to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome this report and I thank all the officers that are involved in our children's services. The constant need to find savings and the impact of the pandemic on children's wellbeing and mental health continue to make our roles as corporate parents, all of our roles, very, very challenging. The service is well aware of both the present and the future pressures, and I think has been making some really sensible decisions, such as increasing foster carer fees, working on social workers' capacity to support our own foster carers and reduce our reliance on more expensive independent agencies. There are a few specific challenges that I would like my colleagues here to consider. We've already mentioned monitoring, which is great, but yeah, we don't have data on especially school attendance, and I really urge the Mayor and Cabinet members to support basically spend some money on making sure we can get that monitoring, because at the moment we don't know if children in care have worse school attendance, and it makes it very difficult for us to provide the support that we need to. There are difficulties and also successes in our approach to looking after unaccompanied asylum seeker children. This is really close to my heart as I cared for an Afghan asylum seeker a couple of years ago. We have some absolutely fabulous staff and other agencies supporting the 61 unaccompanied asylum seekers we have in our care, and I do believe we're doing our very best at providing mental health support, but I'm sure it will never be enough. The Home Office immigration process is incredibly cruel. As of June 2021, less than half of Afghan refugees were being granted asylum, and more than half of those unsuccessful were being overturned at appeal. I went through that process. For young, unaccompanied asylum seekers spending years fighting through the courts to have the permission to stay, it is awful for their carers, for the social workers, for everyone involved in that process. That's a national issue, but just for everyone to be aware what many of our unaccompanied children, unaccompanied asylum seekers are going through. Linked to this, we have real difficulties in finding appropriate racial and religious matches for our children in care, and I would love to see an increase in recruitment of more diverse independent visitors to help support, what we're saying about children coming from Afghanistan and other asylum seekers. Budget-wise, a massive challenge for the service is the cost of out-of-area placements. This has been covered a lot in national media. There are companies who are profiteering from children's homes. For example, Calcott made profits of 36% last year, whilst their homes were inadequately staffed. And I'm not suggesting in any way that any Bristol children are in adequate homes. We currently have out-of-area placements costing up to £11,000 a week. It's a really difficult situation, and I understand officers are working really hard on it. But we've got to question these profit-making companies and if they are serving us well in how we are looking after our children. I really enjoy my role in the corporate parenting panel, and I hope to continue to engage all the members in this chamber of the issues facing all of us. As we said, we're all corporate parents. And if there was one ask from me, I would say really talk about fostering. If we can have more of our own foster carers, that makes a difference. So when we're out and about, if we can keep raising that, that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Can I now ask Councillor Goulandris to speak?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Firstly, like previous speakers, I'd like to thank and pay tribute to all those involved in supporting Bristol's children in care and care leavers, council officers, partners, foster parents, the Hope Virtual School, and the children in care representatives who come to what they must find rather boring, formal corporate parenting panel meetings, although they're always far too polite to even hint at that. Looking after and protecting children and young people is one of the most important tasks we undertake as a council. Hopefully it won't come as a shock to anyone in this chamber, but every councillor, as Councillor Massey has already said, is de facto corporate parent to the 700 or so young people in care in Bristol. And they are just as much your responsibility as any children you may have. We should have the same aspirations, hopes and dreams for our children in care and care leavers as we do for our natural children. You will note from the report that the number of children requiring council support has risen from 643 in March 2021 to 695 in March 2022, and the figures continue to rise. Most of the children are placed with foster parents, and that's the best solution all round, emotionally and financially. We desperately need more foster parent volunteers. Otherwise, more children will end up in children's homes. There is limited local capacity, which sadly means some of our children end up being placed out of Bristol in some extraordinarily expensive places. And I agree with Councillor Mack that we do need to look at that very, very carefully. You will see from the report that Maple Tree Children's Home in Bristol is currently closed for refurbishment. Hopefully, it'll be able to reopen shortly and add to our local capacity. Children in care often have a disrupted education. The Hope Virtual School, highlighted in the report, does a great job in keeping an overview of each child in care's educational progress. With this support, there is no reason why children in care should not achieve academically on a par with their peers. In summary, parents regularly make great sacrifices for their children. We all want the best for our children, and that must include our corporate children. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goulandris. Can I now ask Councillor Classic to speak?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I would also like to echo my colleagues' thanks to the officers and everyone involved in pulling together this report. I think it was a really great report. It pulled together from a lot of sources and there was a lot in there. I'd especially like to thank our young person for coming in today and speaking to us. I think quite often in this chamber we get these reports, we read them, they're filled with statistics and percentages and outcomes, and sometimes that can really detach us from the work that's actually in there. So thank you for being a human face, as it were, and actually forcing us to consider the people behind this report, because that is so important. As others have stated, this is one of the most important roles of this council, and that it is so important that we get it right for these young people. So from that, there are a lot of really great things in this report. I'm pleased to see that, as Councillor Massey said, that the accommodation is improving, that we're seeing fewer moves, more stability, improvements in education and higher education places. But it is still worrying that we do not have that attendance data. Evidence does show that engagement with education is one of the best, brings the best outcomes later in life, and we do really need to know that our young people are doing that, are engaged, are attending, and I really do hope that is something that is pushed within this next year. Obviously, there are going to be challenges facing us. The cost of living crisis is going to hit our carers, and that really. And while I'm pleased to see that we've increased the finances to our carers, we do need to make sure that that doesn't affect the number of places in this city. And the number of unaccompanied asylum seekers who will be coming to this city. We need to make sure that there are places for them and that they are welcome as a city of sanctuary. Also, the strain on NHS services hitting our young people I noticed mental health services, especially getting GP appointments. That is really critical, and that is something as a council we need to make sure we get right, that young people are helped in getting those. But overall, it was a fantastic, the report is very comprehensive, and I'm glad to see that as a city we are taking these things, we are taking it seriously, and we are doing what we can for our young people. And thank you to our young person for attending today.
Thank you, Councillor Classic. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. 2 or 3 points I want to focus on. One of them is slightly concerning in that the Hope School, which has already been mentioned, is a wonderful institution, and it's been going for quite a number of years, and effectively lobbying on behalf of those looked after children to make certain that they get the education that they need and deserve. And I remember some years ago when council officers in another part of the council wrote to them and told them not to lobby so vociferously to make certain that the children got the SEND statements that they required and needed. I think they got the answer from the officers there that they deserved. I am slightly concerned now because the Hope Governors are cross-party and an organisation which has representatives, professionals from a number of areas, primary school heads, secondary school heads, further education, etc. And they've just been written to say that it's being closed. Now, no doubt there'll be another institution which comes forward to do the same job of advising the head, and it was originally brought in at the request of a previous head of the virtual school some years ago, the governing body. But I would hope that with the new structure that's brought forward, that it is done in a way that encourages cross-party involvement through this council, because it's a vitally important part of our responsibility as corporate parents. The second part is far more positive. It's about our fostering service, which is good. We don't do everything perfectly in this council, as I've mentioned on 1 or 2 occasions on different subjects, but we do provide good support and fair terms for our foster carers, and that's absolutely vital. I was unfortunate a few weeks ago to see an article in the Post from some chap who'd been a foster carer complaining about the terms and conditions that he was working under. I don't think he was a Bristol foster parent, but you don't go into that job because you want a good pension. You don't go into it because you want to earn a fortune. You go into it because you want to look after those children. And people of all shapes, sizes and orientations make very good foster carers, but a lot of them don't actually realise that they would. So we actually put out in our area
Can I ask you to wrap up there, Councillor Hopkins, please?
Yes, Lord Mayor. A thank you to all the existing foster carers in our area, and an encouragement to all those others who might become foster parents to come forward and volunteer, because the two golden rules are that they put the children first and they make them feel safe. And basically, there's a lot of people out there who could do that who don't realise it. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to offer Councillor Craig the opportunity to sum up in the comments, because she moved the report.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who has commended the report, and to my colleagues, all of whom are members of the corporate parenting panel. As I said before, I know I personally take my role extremely seriously, as do other members, but even though we have the panel, I do want to again stress that you are all 70 councillors in this chamber are corporate parents. And so any way that you can help, particularly as you could see, the numbers are going up, and we need more foster carers in this city. So one of the things that we have agreed to do is to actually have a real push and a campaign, and I'm hoping that each and every one of the councillors in this chamber will help spread the message within their own communities. And actually, if you have friends and family members or anyone you know have that conversation and ask if any of them have considered becoming foster carers, because you're absolutely right. It's better for our children to be in the care of foster carers than actually be in institutionalised kind of children's homes. I want to again thank Tavoy, who I've just invited in I'm going to mentor her for a little bit so she could see how the world of politics works, because again, this chamber needs to be representative of all the people in this city, and I very much welcome Tavoy being here in the chamber with us today, and thank you to everyone who has actually been gracious in allowing her to be seated in the chamber alongside me. So I commend the report to each and every one of you, and thank you all again.
Thank you. Thank you, Asha, for bringing your visitor. It is definitely the highlight of the day, and it does make everything seem very real and purposeful. So thank you. This report is noted, and that concludes this agenda item. Moving on then to agenda item 10, which is the appointment of Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service. I would like to ask Councillor Cheney, as Chair of the Selection Committee, to move the report.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I rise to move the report on the appointment of a new Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service. A cross-party panel, including Councillor Classic, Councillors Dyer and Francis, Councillor Hulme and Councillor Eddy, chaired by myself, conducted interviews back in September and were unanimous in our agreement of appointing Stephen Peacock into the role. Stephen has, of course, done a brilliant job as Executive Director of Growth and Regen, and I know will be a fantastic fit in the role of Chief Exec. The interview process was robust and attended by a third-party observer, Rob Tinlin, on behalf of the Local Government Association. Rob was involved throughout the process before the interviews themselves and subsequently provided an assurance statement which said, and I quote, "I am happy to provide my independent assurance that the processes adopted for the recruitment and appointment of the Chief Executive were fair, sound, practical, unbiased and conform to good practice." I also want to take this opportunity to thank Mike Jackson, our departing Chief Executive, for his 4 years of service to the city. I've worked very closely with Mike throughout, and I know how much of his time, but more importantly, his heart and soul that he's put into this city over the past 4 years, through good times and through the less than good times. A big personal thanks from me for all your support, but also thanks on behalf of our group who recognise what a fantastic job you've done in your time there. Thanks, Mike, and good luck. So in summary, I move the paper for the appointment of Stephen Peacock as our new Chief Exec and Head of Paid Service, and I hope you will join me in welcoming Stephen to the role.
Thank you, Councillor Cheney. I would also like to ask Councillor Tony Dyer to second the report on behalf of the Green Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to second the report. Because we recruited internally, Stephen is well aware of the challenges he faces, so I will therefore reserve my remarks. Thank you.
The recommendation is shown on the screen and is on in the report in your agenda. So all those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against? Thank you. That concludes this agenda item. Agenda item 11 is the medium-term financial plan and strategy. And I would like again to ask Councillor Craig Cheney to move this report.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It won't have escaped anyone's attention that we are living in difficult times. The pandemic, a war in Europe, lack of forward thinking on energy and food policy, and much more is driving economic uncertainty, rising inflation and a climate crisis. And these problems are impacting us here in Britain, with the fire being fuelled by a confused government in crisis. Unsurprisingly, councils across the UK are hit by rising costs and escalating complexity and therefore are facing huge financial challenges. Bristol has not escaped this. Just a couple of years ago, we had a 5-year plan which required us to make little or no further savings or reductions throughout this period, but that plan has been torn up by events globally and nationally, and the outlook for the council is now unbelievably difficult. On the back of 12 years of austerity is even harder than it could have been. In Bristol, our particular problems are the increasing cost of children's services, adult social care and housing the homeless through temporary accommodation. As a result of all these pressures, the council is currently looking at a deficit of £31.1 million in 23-24, rising to a peak of £37.5 in 27-28. The forecast gap is, of course, extremely sensitive to inflation, service pressures and funding assumptions, so that could range from a best case of £14 million to a worst case of £87.6 million. The 31 million figure is a realistic but uncertain medium case, adjusted to incorporate the emerging pressures, possible available resources and latest government funding assumptions. There's a huge gap between best case and worst case scenario because there are just so many unknowns. We have forecasted a 5-year medium-term financial plan for today, but that may totally change in 2 weeks' time, and again next April as we go through mini-budget reversals, clarifications, full budgets and changes in leadership. At this moment in time, it is hard to know who will be running the country next week, let alone what the financial implications of their policies may be. And I commend officers in their attempts to do so here. Whatever this or the next Prime Minister or next Chancellor's policies may be, considering the announcement from the UK's last 3 Chancellors, it doesn't seem likely that the government will step in to cover the Council's shortfalls. So we have to work on the assumption that we will fix this budget gap ourselves. As you all know, we are legally required to set a balanced budget, so we have no choice other than to leverage external income, maximise locally generated income and reduce costs. There's no cash hidden down the back of the sofa, nor is there a silver bullet to the financial difficulties councils across the country are facing. Difficult decisions will need to be made, especially if the government continues to cut funding in real terms. We'll continue to keep everyone updated on the Council's financial position ahead of bringing forward the annual budget in February, and I know the cross-party budget task and finish group will be a vital part of the processes as we roll through to that. I recommend the report to Council today and thank my finance teams and teams across the Council for the excellent work they have put in building this picture, however bleak it may be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheney. I'd like to ask Councillor Tom Renard to second it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm happy to second this report, even though its content's fairly bleak. As is reflected in our medium-term financial plan, councils across the country are facing huge financial pressures due to various factors, including inflation and financial uncertainty. And we've heard the headlines around the deficit, both in terms of what a best-case scenario, which is just grim, and then even more grim is the worst case. And it's going to mean a few things. We're going to have to change the way this council operates. We're going to have to look at how we can target support to those who need it most. We'll have to continue to look at ways to leverage external revenue, maximise locally generated income and cut costs. I also know a large majority of councillors voted for our HRA plan at the Budget Full Council. And whilst I'd like to assure you that the plans for house building, retrofitting, fire safety, maintenance repairs remain our ambition, inflation is outstripping CPI inflation for construction materials, and there will be more difficult decisions to come about where investment is prioritised and how it is paid for. We have pressures on housing, including the temporary accommodation issues, and we're looking at a number of solutions to bring these costs down. But really what we need is a change in national government policy. And with this in mind, I'd invite all councillors in here to put pressure on the government for it to properly fund councils in the interest of our city and the interest of local governments across the country. These finances have been under pressure for over a decade. There's no fat to trim, as one minister has recently quoted. And I'd like to invite him perhaps to pop down to Bristol, if he is still the minister in the next few days and weeks, to come and tell us exactly where he thinks that's going to happen. We've got chaos in the national Tory government, and it is local government yet again paying the price. I very much hope that we'll be able to see a suitable funding settlement for local government, but given the Chancellor's recent remarks, I'm not particularly optimistic. But we need to keep up the pressure on the government regardless, because the services presenting the biggest financial challenges must be addressed, and we cannot just continue to move the deck chairs around locally. What we need to get our temporary accommodation provision properly funded. We need properly funded adult social care, and we need to get the funding to properly fund our children's services and our children's education. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Renard. I'd now like to invite Councillor Fodor to comment, please.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, we've got 2 reports here. Our predicted money over the next 5 years and how we use capital. They're not the same thing, and I'd rather we actually dealt with them separately. Thanks to all the officers, of course, for supporting the Finance Working Group scrutiny members so helpfully. Remember how mixing good and bad debt caused a world banking crash? Well, I think we should debate each budget document on its own merits. The outlook is grim, a likely shortfall of 14 to 86.6 million in this plan. It threatens decent public services. Those most in need are going to suffer the ensuing cuts. Many vital programmes are at risk if the base case forecast of over 37 million shortfall next year is true. And that, in what last I checked, is still one of the richest countries in the world. Our funds should align to our strategic priorities, but it's bleak. From central government's noose around council finances, the interest rates mess, the need to deliver pay awards and the national real living wage as a responsible employer, and the rise in energy costs. The one bright thing is that our investments in renewable energy assets are now showing their true value. External income and revenue opportunities should help. So where's the commercialisation initiative we discussed in detail a few years ago? The inadequate government settlement for adult social care charging reforms is a real worry. All of you should read the risks in this report. They're going to affect every service, potentially. And Greens don't want purely financial value. We need social and environmental value for good decisions. The capital strategy, next. We've raised a number of issues. Firstly, the balance between invest to grow and invest to repair and maintain and save is crucial. The dire need to mend assets had led to a noticeable change in that ratio, but I think there's further to go, so the city looks after the residents already here and is fit for them before it gets ever larger. The other issue is to make sure capital decisions include carbon, social value and environmental impact in their business case. We can't have projects that undermine our goals and values. This needs to apply to council investments too. The report acknowledges it, but we need to apply these issues now to long-term deals and projects. The constant slippage of the capital programme and the impact on local works, highway road safety and so on is a real issue to address. One final point. The budget ahead is the final year when there's an elected mayor. As we prepare for a new, more collaborative governance involving the whole council, we must see options kept open for the new multi-party committees who are going to be delivering the budget for 2024-25. That's something we really need to see coming in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fedor. I'd now like to invite Councillor Goulandris to comment.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Like Councillor Cheney and other speakers, I'd like to place on record my thanks to council officers who have worked tirelessly with members to produce these complex documents outlining the council's medium-term financial strategy and its capital strategy. To quote from the preface to the medium-term financial strategy, this is a complex process with many iterations of possibilities to present as discrete options. Now, I do have a confession to make. Whilst all large businesses, government departments and local authorities have to produce medium and long-term financial strategies, I find these documents a little frustrating at times because a massive amount of work goes into the projections and then unforeseen events come along and upset the apple cart. A global pandemic, or the biggest war in mainland Europe since 1945, and now global cost-push inflation and globally rising interest rates. Who would want to be a writer of long-term financial plans? So, Councillor Cheney, you have my sympathies. The current figures are particularly problematic, given the size of the projected shortfall in income versus expenditure. We still don't know exactly what we will receive from central government, but even a generous settlement, as we indeed did receive during COVID, is still likely to mean taking some very, very hard decisions. Turning now to the capital strategy, I and my group do have one reservation, and it concerns the apparently low allocation of capital to spend to save. Businesses and households regularly prioritise capital spending so that it helps reduce their future outgoings. Buying a house, for example, to eliminate rental costs. Simply put, they spend to save, they use capital to reduce ongoing and future expenditure costs. On page 7 of the capital strategy document, that's page 133 in the council papers, it's a little disappointing to see that hardly any capital is being allocated to this very important financial concept. In fact, the small capital sum allocated in 2021 to invest to save, 9% of total capital spend, is now being reduced to just 4%. In our view, that's not sensible at a time that we need to improve our efficiency as a council. I hope further reflection will be given to our future capital strategy and that there will be an increase in the percentage of capital allocated to projects which save us money in the long term. In summary, we recognise the complexity and challenges of council budgets and financial projections. We acknowledge the work that has gone into producing these documents. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goulandris. I'd now like to invite Councillor Brown to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I agree with much of what's already been said, but so forgive me if I do repeat things. As last year, I'd like to thank the officers for their openness with members on the Finance Task Group and their efforts to help us understand the assumptions, thoughts and figures that lie behind the MTFP. I'd also like to thank them for for them bringing it to this chamber earlier than they did last year. It's good for all members to see the figures as early as possible in the cycle. I'd also like to thank Councillor Gollop for the collegiate and thoughtful way he chairs the task group. These are qualities that will stand him in good stead when it becomes his turn to be Chancellor for a week or two. Anyway, more seriously, last year I expressed reservations about the extent to which the paper outlined the scale of the challenge that the Council would have to consider when setting the budget. And that paper indicated only a 23 million shortfall. Whilst it is noticeable the change, not just in the projected shortfall for the next year, which is up from 7 million. 7 million was the figure that we had in last year's MTFP for 23-24. It's up to 31 million. But also the trend. Last year the shortfall was anticipated to drop off following next year. Now it's anticipated to rise further to 37 million and stay at that level. So if we thought last year's budget was tough, this year is going to be on another level and will hit services harder and for longer, without significant change in government direction, as has already been mentioned. Now, a significant part of that rise is down to inflation, and that may be tempered by the government's 6-month energy price cap. But with things so uncertain, we've no idea where we'll be come April. Unfortunately, that and the various other unknowns mean that this base cost, the 31 million figure, could prove to be wildly out, and we have a worst-case scenario in the document which goes much further. We must prepare ourselves for worse scenarios as the year goes on. As the report points out, it will not just be the Council that suffers the effects of inflation. Our arm-length companies may have to draw down a further 37.9 million from the Council. This will impact their project viability and profit returns to the Council. That section worries me, particularly because it states that that impact has not been incorporated into the rest of the document, and potential impact. And as well as inflation, the report acknowledges that some of this year's budget pressures, which will be carried into next year, are down to undelivered savings. Last year, I raised concerns over the way historically fixed savings have been identified and not delivered. This year, we find that a third of anticipated savings are at risk of not being delivered. And if these are carried forward, they account for a quarter of the base case budget gap. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to end there, but with an appeal to Councillor Cheney that he engages with the task group when it comes to the consideration of the budget, because last year there was a perception that there's two parallel processes going on, and it would be good if you were to attend the task group.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, thanks to the officers for producing several reports in one. They didn't really have any option because so many things are moving in different directions at different speeds that it's very difficult to make a proper medium-term financial plan. And the one thing that I would actually ask for is that there's a process built in so that people in this council can actually see as circumstances change or as things crystallise how our planning must be adjusted. Because it's no use putting down a document and then 3 years later realising that none of it actually fits. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, with that gruesome game of hokey-cokey being played up in Westminster, it's very difficult to judge exactly what's going to be coming next. And that could happen in a few weeks, a few months, anything could really happen. So we have to be mindful that there's things which are completely outside this council's control. I must though put in the reminder that the budgeting would not be quite so bad if we hadn't lost £46 million on a very rash investment scheme known as Bristol Energy. That would make a very severe difference to the way that some of these figures actually look. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Cheney, as mover of the report, you have an opportunity to speak again if you like.
Yeah, I will. Only very quickly though. So thanks everyone for the comments, and I'm glad that we're all kind of on the same page with quite how difficult the position is going to be and how difficult next year or this budget setting process is going to be. On a couple of points already, I mean, Martin, you talked about the commercialisation strategy. Why haven't we got a commercialisation strategy? We don't have enough staff to do it. Why does the capital programme slip? We don't have enough staff to deliver it. Why are we struggling to deliver savings? We don't have enough staff to deliver them. So no one stands outside City Hall and demands more accountants, more project managers, and more solicitors, and more planners, right? But without them, we can't deliver all the things that we want to do. So those things have been cut over years because we've had to, because we don't want to cut frontline services. But of course, the impact on that is that what we're really starting to see now is the back room of the council has been absolutely decimated. And if we try and do more to protect frontline services into this coming budget process, that's only going to get worse. On the point about investing to save, I mean, for me, maintaining assets is an invest to save. If a bridge collapses, that's a lot of money, so we do need to fix those bridges. We can't afford to just kick that down the road and say we need to invest in something else. But the point is taken, and we will continue to work on that as we get through the budget process. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Cheney. As I said, this report is for noting. The recommendation is shown on the screen, and it's in your agenda pack. So all those in favour say aye. All those against? Thank you. That concludes this agenda item. We've come to the a halt in this meeting. We're going to have a short little interval. An adjournment is the word I'm looking for, for 20 minutes. Refreshments for councillors are in the rooms along the corridor as advised before the meeting. And also the conference hall is available to all of us. Thank you. The meeting will start again at, should we say 20 past? Yeah, 20 past 7. Thank you. If we could be promptly back in at 20 past, you'll have about 22 minutes. Where's my sword bearer? Oh, I don't get one. No, that's okay. Welcome back. As a slight addendum to the agenda, we're just going to go backwards slightly because could we? Yes. If you, so words matter, and I said that the report was for noting, and you'll see that actually on the slide it says that elements of the report are for noting and elements of the report are for approving. So I'd just like to rerun the vote. So, can I say note on approval once? Can I say note on approval once, or should I say it separately? So, we can actually, it is a sort of element of semantics here, but we can take all 5 elements together, and I can ask you to note and approve the recommendations in front of us. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against? So I think that has been approved and noted well and thoroughly. Thank you so much. Okay, so now at this point of the meeting, we are going to come to the motions. So the first item, which is item 11, and I think I should possibly say that we don't perceive that we're going to need an extension to the meeting now. We feel that we're on time. So we have an altered motion, which is shown on the screen in the room. This motion has been altered, which means that all groups have agreed to a change, which in this case was the addition of the final 2 paragraphs. The altered motion was published today as a supplement to the agenda. So I would like to ask Councillor Jeff Gollop of the Conservative Group to move the motion. Councillor Gollop.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I have to say I'm saddened to have to move this motion. It shouldn't be necessary. But I just want to start by just recapping on what has happened. A group of parents, desperately let down by the council in the provision of special educational needs, use all means, including social media, to inform councillors and the press of the council's failings. Now, in my view, these parents are a remarkable group of people who deserve to feel the council is on their side, not adding to the many challenges that they already face. But instead of responding to their needs, somewhere within this organisation, someone made a decision to monitor those parents' social media accounts. Now we have a report. There are a lot of words in that report. Jeff, oh, use that. There are a lot of, is that better? Yep. There are a lot of words in that report, but actually not a lot of information. It is of great concern to me that the administration appear not to have condemned these actions. And by not condemning, that means they appear to have condoned them. Tonight's debate provides a last chance for Asher to correct that. Now let me be clear, Lord Mayor, all councils have responsibilities to treat residents fairly and proportionately. And I would support legal means of tracing information where fraud or abuse is an issue. But not, my Lord Mayor, because someone disagrees with and is critical of this administration. Those means were used to monitor parents of our most vulnerable children in the name of this council. Now, it doesn't matter to me whether it was systematic or random. That was wrong. I believe almost all of us agree that that was wrong. Yet, my Lord Mayor, we employ people who actually think that was right. How can we not have a policy that makes clear that was not acceptable, that outlines dismissal as the ultimate end result for such disregard, and sets out procedures for approval at high level in the rare cases where such monitoring is appropriate? Only an independent inquiry will tell us who is responsible for this, Members, please join me and my group in voting for that. I beg to move the altered motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gollop. I'd now like to ask Councillor Christine Townsend of the Green Group to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So whilst I'm confident that this council will pass this motion, the power and the resources used to investigate our citizens must be used with very strict boundaries and ensure that it doesn't become an abuse of power or a method to silence. This administration and senior officers may well find some of the messages or the feedback uncomfortable. So they should. The service has been poor for many, many years. It may contradict their own narrative it wishes to tell itself, but weaponising its own power to silence and defund is a path to authoritarianism. It's my belief that this is why an independent investigation is needed. There was found to be no formal process followed for gaining internal legal permission to undertake this collection of material. It involved cross-referencing social media accounts and the collation of an apparent evidence bundle that was then used by the lead for education. As elected representatives of our residents, for whom all council officers work, this is very alarming. Whilst we're told there's no evidence of elected members authorising this, it suggests to me that such practices were assumed to be normalised under the political leadership of this administration. Had that not been normal for officers to undertake such actions, they would have gone through the necessary processes and got permission and recorded such permission. The aim was to crush a funding stream of an organisation, the very purpose of which is to advocate for parents and carers and enhance their own agency within the statutory education system. This is something that the administration claims it wishes to support. The reasons provided by officers to justify this use of taxpayer-funded work time has since been blown out of the water. The Parent Carer Forum has just received funding from the National Lottery. Due diligence in relation to the governance, one of the key areas we are told was a reason for this funding, would have been a key area of investigation by that National Lottery before those funds were granted. Councillor Craig stated at People Scrutiny that the Parent Carer Forum was, and I quote, in disarray. The National Lottery did not obviously find such a case. This view is also not shared by North Somerset or South Gloucestershire councils, who continue to have full confidence in the organisation. Indeed, Contact, the national organisation, who oversees all parent carer forums across the whole of our country, has stated publicly that they have always been professional and appropriate. This in itself is a reason to vote for the motion. In the words of one of the country's and this city's greatest Labour MPs, Tony Benn, I say this, or he rather says this: those who sacrifice their view in order to get to the top very often leave no footprint in the sand. It is those boat rockers who are the ones who build the craft.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. So we'd now like to hear from the other speakers on the motion, and I would first like to ask Councillor Asher Craig to speak on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I appreciate that when we talk on the subject of SEN, it is a very emotive area for all concerned, especially for parents and children. It's why, when we heard of the allegations, we immediately commissioned a report to get to the bottom of what happened. I want to set out clearly and factually the situation surrounding the accusations that council staff systematically viewed and shared social media posts by members of Bristol Parent Carers Forum and the reason why, as the Cabinet Lead for Education, think it is wrong to be pressured by political opposition to fund any organisation using a motion. It's a very dangerous precedent to set, and there are a lot of organisations in the city vying for limited council funding, and deciding which gets it through a politicised debate in full council, where the alternatives aren't properly assessed, is no way for this council to function. I also take issue with the way this motion talks about the council's legal team, implying their investigation wasn't genuine. There's a difference between not agreeing with the outcome of a report and questioning the integrity of those who wrote it. The concerns raised relating to the gathering of social media information is well documented in the People Scrutiny report. All the information that was collated is publicly available, and any suggestion that this council was carrying out covert surveillance on parents is just ridiculous. But if councillors want to spend taxpayers' money on an external investigation, then that's fine. We intended to vote for the original motion that called for this. Since 2019, the council has been on a very long journey with Bristol Parent and Carers Forum. This included contracting an interim chair from another parent forum to lead the organisation because of long-standing issues within the group, which included lack of leadership. Bristol City Council supported the forum's application for DFE funding for 2020-21 in the hope that Contact should support the current forum to increase their capacity to fill their role effectively. In March 2021, Bristol City Council appointed a SEND Partnership Engagement Development Officer to enable the council to reach out to and build relationships with a wide range of parent and carer groups in recognition of the forum's limited membership and still evolving constitution. Officers working in the service area had concerns relating to the governance of the group and the fact that it represented a relatively small section of Bristol's diverse parent-carer community. In 2019, we agreed a written statement of action which set out serious shortcomings in the Council's response to the EHCP process and highlighted a number of areas that were cause for concern, including the fractious relationship with parents. Working with the new consortium of groups, which is a growing partnership of 21 parent groups across the city, including the Parents Forum, we have co-developed and agreed the SEND Partnership Plan, which is a reframing of an extension
Councillor Craig, I'm afraid I am going to have to ask you to wind up soon.
We have a strategic voice for parents in this city. It's called the Consortium of Groups, which includes, as I said, the Parent Carer Forum. Your motion is littered with inaccuracies and emotive language, but I want to make it fundamentally clear that we have a strategic relationship with parents of children with STEM in this city, and to give the impression otherwise is to devalue and dismiss the role of this group of committed parents and carers.
Thank you, Councillor Craig.
Most of whom are volunteers as well as paid staff.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Tim Kent to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm speaking today in favour of the altered motion and thank the mover of the motion for accepting those additions from us. I support the reinstatement of Bristol Parent Carer Forum as the partner organisation of the Council and to work with the Council on co-production. At the moment, there is no parent voice at the strategic co-production level. Maybe that suits some people's agenda here. It is not, though, the desire and agenda of the parents of this city, nor their children who have for too long struggled against a hostile system, and regrettably that hostility is clearly widespread. At People's Scrutiny only 2 weeks ago, we had a full presentation from the officers where detailed questions were asked of them on the fact-finding report. From this it was clear, no credible evidence at all was produced to prove that members of Bristol Parent Carer Forum had in any way campaigned as officers of that organisation, broken any confidences of the council, or had not acted in the best interests of parents in this city. All of the accusations, all the innuendo is false. What was revealed was a campaign of distrust, uncredible accusations, including some made at that meeting, and consistent, and I would argue, systematic monitoring of social media, which led to false conclusions that reinforce the incorrect biased views of senior leaders in this council. The new group that has been set up for consultation is welcome, but has not, does not, and cannot co-produce. It simply is not possible for that group to do that. We learned that the council does not know if officers may have infiltrated private Facebook groups to gather evidence. We have learnt that officers did use their own private social media accounts to gather evidence, despite reassurances that did not happen. We learnt that within the People Directorate, there was clear guidance on social media monitoring, and the activity we saw clearly breached that guidance. We also had many unanswered questions. What became clear from the fact-finding report is that an independent investigation was now vital if this council and the administration wishes to rebuild trust with parents. The air needs to be cleared. People's Scrutiny members felt so strongly that this was the case that the vote was unanimous from across all four parties, supporting a motion calling for an independent investigation and for Bristol Parent Care Reform to be reinstated for co-production. So today we have a choice. We can dedicate the council to openness and partnership, working with parents and support an investigation. Or we can vote against that, or abstain, which is exactly the same thing. But we need to be clear. This issue will not go away until there's an independent investigation to resolve it, to clear up what actually happened. No matter how you choose to vote today, that will be the final outcome. That investigation will occur one way or the other.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. I'd now like to invite Councillor Gary Hopkins to speak on behalf of the Knoll Community Party.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. There's one other aspect that's not been brought up. There was false information put out by the administration to say that the investigations and the concerns had come from the parents, which turned out to be complete bunkum. But misinformation of that sort is not unknown. I think it's absolutely vital that this independent investigation happens. Some couple of years ago, I, with others, actually pressed for an independent investigation into Bristol Energy Company. That was rejected by the administration. They had the votes at that time to do it. It eventually happened when the independent auditors looked at this. If it had been accepted before, some of the £46 million that was wasted would have been saved. In some ways, this is even more important because we're talking about the integrity of this council and the way it actually behaves towards citizens in this city. And I think that after this investigation, if it's shown, as I suspect, that some people in senior positions were actually encouraging this behaviour, then I think that one or two people need to question their position in this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gollop, would you like to respond as you are the mover of the motion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank all the councillors who've spoken in support of this altered motion. But forgive me, I'm not going to spend any more time on you because I agree with every word you said. But I do want to comment on what Councillor Craig said. I invited you to condemn, and instead you chose to justify. And that is disgraceful. You said only moments ago that there was not covert surveillance. My Lord Mayor, I believe I'm speaking and I believe I have the right to speak. Thank you. Councillor Craig, you said there was no...
If we do have 3 minutes, Councillor Gollop has 3 minutes to sum up. Thank you.
Councillor Craig said that there was no covert surveillance. I think it's very clear that there was surveillance. I think it's very clear that those parents did not know that they were being surveyed. So actually, I believe that definition of covert surveillance is correct. and Councillor Craig was misleading the House by making a statement that there was no covert surveillance. That is totally out of order, my Lord Mayor. Councillor Craig said that we were politicising this issue. Believe me, I'm not politicising it. I am disgusted by the way this council carried out its role. It is not acceptable, and I will not be accused of being political. I will always make clear when I think something is out of order, and I think it would do Councillor Craig wise to actually note when the majority of members of this House also believe it's out of order. We all know that there are members on the Labour benches who also think it's out of order. Perhaps they might like to go for a discreet cup of coffee at this moment. The fact is, my Lord Mayor, that we've heard an attempt to justify the unjustifiable. And that is embarrassing, because I had hoped we might see some consensus and try to move forward so that we would not be having to blame an administration for this, that we could actually see that it was a mistake that happened, we have an independent inquiry to identify that and take this matter forward. But it appears that you have chosen to make this a party issue. Only the rest of us don't see it as that. We see it as a disgrace. My Lord Mayor, I hope members can share with me and make sure that this request for this independent review and inquiry is carried by a substantial majority. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gollop. Mayor Rees, do you wish to respond? It's not really in the remit.
She's been named, therefore she has the right to reply.
Okay, sorry, beg your pardon. I've been told by the monitoring officer that you do have a right to reply because you have been named.
Nowhere did I say in my statement that I condoned what you have called this systematic surveillance of social media. Okay, it was not systematic, and this is the problem that we have. I have said in hold on. I have said in I never used the word. I said in my statement that we were going to support the call for an independent investigation.
I never used the word
I said
systematic.
it quite clearly in my.
I can't hear if both of you are speaking at once.
I made it fundamentally clear that we
Councillor
would
Gollop,
support.
can you sit down for a moment, please? We'll just clarify.
Can I not make a point of personal clarification?
Well, I think
no, because every time
Councillor
I clarified,
Craig
you
is in
told
the
me I
middle of
couldn't
making her
speak.
clarification. So let's have one clarification at a time, please.
So I clarified in my report. Let me. Oh, I put it away. But I made it fundamentally clear that we would. Our intention was to support the call for an independent inquiry. You kind of, and this is the problem with this House. You kind of skip over. You know. You go for the incendiary, you go for the bluster. You missed that out. I said that I would support that. What I'm not going to support is this House using motion, golden motion, silver motions, call it what you will, as a backdoor to funding organisations without going through any proper procedure. And that is what I am against, not the actual review.
Thank you. Councillor Gollop, I will give you an opportunity to speak again very briefly if you've got something that you want to say on a point of clarification.
I just wanted to clarify. I made the point that I was not accusing it of being systematic. And I actually said in my speech that it didn't matter whether it was systematic or random, that it was still unacceptable. So I'm not prepared to be told that I made a statement which I did not. And I would like that comment withdrawn. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Mayor Rees, do you have some comments?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lord Mayor. I mean, it's I was taking some young people around this chamber just a few weeks ago, and you know, again, had to kind of lament on the way we do politics and the opportunities that are taken to well, the missed opportunities to do politics in the way that the city needs and deserves, and this is another example of that. But there's a lot of nuance to this. It's not captured, Jeff. I mean, I must admit, of all the people I knew before the election, my election, to the kind of people I know after the election, you are one of the most disappointing councillors I've got to know because of the way you've operated. But nonetheless, we are where we are. We're happy if you want to go ahead with the review. That's fine. You can commit council resources to that. The only thing we would ask is that one is independently led, which we think with LGA would provide some of that. But be honest and publish the costs of it, both the financial and the time costs in terms of council officers, but also the financial and time costs in terms of councillors as well, and actually take ownership of the consequences of the actions you take when you are continually looking for, for your next angle of positioning an attack.
Thank you. Right, can we, we're going to move to the vote. Councillor Kent. Councillor Kent. Thank you. We're going to move to the vote. This will be an e-vote. We don't think the e-vote's working.
It's not on there yet.
Okay, things just keep getting better. The e-vote system isn't working. So we're going to ask the monitoring officer to do a roll call so that you have to call out your votes. Okay. So if we can, there's a little bit of a frisson going around the room at the moment, and it would be best, especially as we're going to call out the votes, it's really important that we have quiet and that the monitoring officer can hear everybody's votes. So let's start it, crack on and do this as quickly as possible. Are you ready? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Don Alexander. Councillor Leslie Alexander.
For.
Councillor Ali. Councillor Bales. Councillor Beach. Apologies. Councillor Bartle.
For.
Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bradshaw.
Abstain.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Classic.
For.
Councillor Cole.
Abstain.
Councillor Craig. Councillor Davies. Councillor Denyer.
For.
Councillor Dyer.
For.
Councillor Eddy.
For.
For.
Councillor Fitzgibbon.
For.
Councillor Fitzjohn. Councillor Fodor.
For.
Councillor Francis.
For.
Councillor Geeta.
For.
Councillor Goggin. Councillor Gollop.
For.
Councillor Goodman. Councillor Gulandris.
For.
Councillor Grant.
For.
Councillor Hance. Councillor Hartley. Councillor Hathway.
For.
Councillor Holland.
Abstain.
Councillor Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Hornchen. Councillor Hooker.
For.
Councillor Hume. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Jackson.
Abstain.
Councillor Jammer. Councillor Kent.
For.
Councillor King.
Abstain.
Councillor Mack.
For.
Councillor Macawi.
For.
Councillor Massey.
Abstain.
Councillor Michelat.
For.
Councillor Mohammed.
For.
Councillor Morris. Councillor Parsons.
For.
Councillor Pearce. Councillor Plowden.
For.
Councillor Pulteney.
For.
Councillor Courtley.
For.
Councillor Renard. Councillor Rippington. Councillor James Scott. Councillor Sharon Scott. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Stafford Townsend.
For.
Councillor Stone. Councillor Townsend. Councillor Varney. Councillor Weston. Councillor Wilcox.
For.
Councillor Windows.
For.
Councillor Y. Councillor Dudd. Mayor Rees.
Yeah, abstain.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
We'll just wait for a while we tots up the numbers. Thank you. So the results of the vote are 39 for, 0 against and 18 abstentions. So the motion is carried. We now move on to the silver motion, which is improved communication for ward councillors. And this motion will be shown on the screen in the room during the speech. I'm sure it'll be up soon. The silver motion.
Lord Mayor, can I ask how much time we've got for this motion, please?
We need to extend now. We do actually now need to extend till about 8:15, so that's 20 minutes. Should we have that, put this to the vote? All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against? I think that's been extended. Why didn't I? What did I do wrong? Oh, I see. Okay, so we will put the silver up on the screens. And in the meanwhile, I would like to ask Councillor Gary Hopkins, again, of the Noel Community Party, to move the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. One blessed relief for everybody is that the motion is short. It's been a curse of this council. We've had 2-page motions which have been so complicated they just get picked over. This one is very simple. It actually says that far more decisions are being made, which is something that I think the general public are concerned about, by officers or the central administration, without people knowing what's going on, and in particular without local councillors being even informed and certainly not consulted. Now I could rattle off a whole list of instances of this, no doubt others will as well, but I'll give you one example, and that was, you will remember a little while ago, a petition debate with regard to the mast about to be plonked in the middle of our park, in Redcatch Park. It took up a huge amount of time and effort to actually get to that stage. What you will not be aware of is that myself and my ward colleague have been desperately trying to get information out of the officers to find out what was going on so that we could stop it before it even got to that stage. And when ourselves and the local community actually found out, and the mayor then originally had said there's nothing that can be done about this, then it was actually decided, oh yes, we can, because we hadn't absorbed all the facts. We hadn't absorbed the case that the council could actually make. And we found out later that the other side ran away when it came to coming up to court. Now, we could have saved all that hassle, and there are lots of other examples as well, where by informing the local councillors, working with them and working with the community, money can be saved and better decisions. And the number of times we've actually had poor decisions made, ward councillors start a campaign to reverse something which wouldn't have needed reversing if the discussions had taken place earlier on. So I'll leave it at that. It's simple, it's straightforward. I look for everybody in this chamber to support a case which I think is unanswerable.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. I believe Councillor Weston is going to rise to second this motion.
I rise to second the motion. I'm not, despite turbulence, shall we say, in central London, I'm not joining the party, but I am seconding it. I know, you're all shocked. I'm seconding it to allow it to be debated, my Lord Mayor. Sorry, what was that? We're like that. But I'm rising to second it, reserving my remarks to allow the debate.
Thank you. So now we're going to hear from the speakers on the motion. And first of all, I'd like to call Councillor Tim Rippington of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have to admit that I've been waiting with bated breath for the first full council motion from the Knoll Community Party. What cause will they champion, I wondered? Would it be about the cost of living crisis and the devastating effect that the latest government blunders will have on their residents? But no, it's not that, is it, Council? Perhaps it would be about the Council's Welcoming Spaces initiative and a plea for residents in Knoll who unfortunately don't currently have anywhere in their ward where they can go in order to avail themselves of this fantastic initiative. But no, it's not that, is it, Council? Or perhaps it would be a call to arms for the Knoll Anti-Growth Coalition to campaign against the extremely unpopular proposals for Broadwalk Shopping Centre. But apparently the Knoll Community Party supports those proposals, contrary to the views of many of their residents, so it does sound like they're not consulting very much on that one. So it's not that, is it, Council? Instead, we get this motion complaining about a lack of consultation. And it has to be said, they do complain quite a lot, don't they, Council? The Council already communicates in a wide variety of ways with councillors regarding policy and its programme of work. Any major policies go through Cabinet or full Council and are published well in advance in the forward plan. Any major consultations go on the Bristol City Council website. Traffic regulation orders, consultations are emailed to councillors when in their ward. Weekly planning updates are shared and weekly licensing updates are also shared. The CEO emails all members regarding emergency decisions. I have to admit that the amount of emails that I get from the council informing me of things is quite overwhelming at times. So the information is out there. However, the council is a 6,000 staff organisation, and so it is quite likely that things do go wrong from time to time. We are therefore more than happy to support writing to officers to remind them of the necessity to involve local councillors whenever appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rippington. Now I'd like to call on Councillor David Wilcox of the Green Group to speak, please.
A nice short one. Why aren't we doing this already? And I reserve remarks.
Councillor Clark from the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief as well. I think I'd like to refer to the second sentence, second paragraph, which calls for improved communication with ward councillors and the adoption of a default position that they should at least be informed and hopefully meaningfully consulted before action is taken in our ward. I don't think any of us would actually rail against that, because that sentiment is something that I think we would all agree with. On large projects, I think that I would just like to make the point about large projects, and I refer specifically to the A4 corridor project, which is something which affects a number of wards across the city And despite asking officers in both Bristol and Wecker for regular updates, it's been incredibly difficult to get any information. And I would just cite that as one example where communication should and could have been improved. On a positive note, I would like to say that I do think that iCasework has been quite a good route into getting communication from council officers, not maybe the interpersonal connections that we might have had in the past, but we would all ask for stronger and better communication, and particularly on these large-scale projects where I think we have we need an ongoing relationship with officers, because these projects are going to last for many, many years on occasions. So the Liberal Democrat group will be supporting this very scant motion before us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I turn to Councillor Hopkins to invite him to make some comments, can I just maybe ask that he...
Excuse me, my Lord Mayor, I think I was due to speak on this one.
Sorry, I'm the person getting ahead of myself. Yep, sorry. Yes, it's not here. I'm reading off the page, unfortunately, and it's not there. I do apologise. 1,000 apologies. Please speak.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. We also support the motion. I do want to acknowledge that I don't think this is a universal problem. All of us as ward councillors will have had experience of fantastic communication from decision makers within the council, but we will all also have experience of that feeling of being kept at arm's length and not knowing what's going on. And it is embarrassing when residents phone up the person that they elected to ask what's happening and you say, I don't know, I'll try and find out. This is a mercifully short motion, something maybe some colleagues could learn from, but it does mean that it's light on detail, so I just want to throw in a couple of suggestions. First of all, one great bit of practice that we have is the Wednesday evening councillor briefings. For those who haven't taken part in those, I would urge you to. They're fantastic, and thank you to Democratic Services for doing those. It's a great opportunity to get under the skin a bit, talk to officers, ask questions in a very collegiate, confidential environment and find out what's going on. On the negative, though, I'm going to respectfully disagree with Councillor Clark about iCasework and the Councillor MP email address. I'll try and be polite, but I think it's awful, frankly. It takes away the personal connection. Rather than find the officer who knows the answer to the problem that you've got, you have to send an email to an anonymous address. If you get a response, you get an anonymous response. And that means you can't follow up, you can't ask any further questions, you can't have a conversation, you just go back to the beginning again and send another email to the anonymous address. So what could have been a 5-minute conversation, I know, maybe I'm just not feeling positive after this evening. But, what could have been a 5-minute conversation ends up being a 3-week email marathon and doesn't necessarily get you to where 5 minutes could have done on the phone. And speaking of phones, I know officers are working at home, and I don't have an issue with that. There's all sorts of benefits to it. But every other organisation on the planet has found a way of diverting people's desk phone numbers to their mobile, to their Teams account, to something they can answer when they're not in the office. But if you want to talk to an officer, with some exceptions, the number that's on their email signature, the number that's on the online register, whatever it's called, is a desk number. And if you ring it, a phone somewhere in this building rings at a desk that nobody's sitting at, and you can't talk to anybody. So please, can I ask, can we find a way of making those numbers reach those people wherever they're working, or issue council mobiles and publish the numbers so that if we need to talk to people, we can. I think that for all of the systems that we've got and for all of the briefings and the emails, that personal connection between ward councillors and officers is what makes things work. So let's have more of it, please.
Thank you. So, Councillor Hopkins, I was just about to say, just to urge you to read the room and note that brevity is being commended at this end of the evening. So, would you like to add to your comments?
I will be very brief in the response. Thank you, Lord Mayor. First thing to say is, with that example I gave earlier on, I had to actually issue a freedom of information request, which has been resisted. I haven't pushed it any further because we actually got the result in the end because of community effort. It's not universal. Quite a lot of officers do help and cooperate very well, but we need to make certain it's universal. And I think that one of the things that when we were discussing motions the other day, party group leaders, was that we said that they had to be monitored to see if they were stuck to. And that is easy with this motion. If people find out that they're not getting the information that they should be getting, they can bring it forward to scrutiny or whatever, so that we can actually point out to Democratic Services that the motion which is going to be passed tonight has not been complied with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Rees, would you like to respond?
Sure. Just a couple of reflections on it. One is in terms of the communication that the organisation has offered to councillors. I think as we look through COVID, our weekly briefings, the welcoming spaces briefings that have gone out, it would probably be good to acknowledge the work that the officers have done to actually make sure that they're proactive in engaging people and not just present this. No, they don't. It's okay. So I hope the tone of this is received. I think we also have to recognise, and I don't think it's universal, but we do have to remember that the organisation works for the city, not the chamber. All right? And that's a subtle but significant difference. And there is a danger, and there's a tendency, and I've seen it when I was a member of staff here as well, for councillors to begin to assume that officers' time is their time, and therefore take officers away from actually delivering for Bristol. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't constantly be vigilant about how we can improve communication. I'm just saying we need to be incredibly careful about that. And while it's great to be able to phone up and get an instant reply, just remember we are in the middle of a phenomenally difficult budgetary challenge that has taken up officers' time as we drive them to identify the savings. And also it's worth remembering that after 12 years of austerity and everything else that's happened, our backroom capacity has been left threadbare. That means that sometimes the immediate response, the administrative response that people want isn't always there. But I would prefer it not to be there for councillors than it not to be there for the city. I'd like it to be there for everyone, but we just have to be a bit responsible with the organisation we've been elected to lead and not fall into the space of thinking it's there to respond to our every whim and to make life as easy as possible for us. There's an element of that, but we have to be aware of the pressures on our organisation.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. The e-voting system, as you know, isn't working, and as I read the room, I am minded to suggest that we put this to an aye-nay vote rather than a roll call. Does anybody object? Okay, so those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. And those against? The motion is carried. Thank you.
My Lord Mayor, sorry to interrupt. I just wondered whether it might be possible for this council to put on record a vote of thanks to our retiring chief exec at his last official meeting. It was mentioned by Councillor Cheney earlier, but maybe we should put it as an official vote.
I agree, absolutely agree. Should we get that? Congratulations. So thank you to all councillors and to all others attending today's meeting. The next meeting of the full council will be held on Tuesday, the 8th of November, 2022. And that's it for today. Good night, good evening, goodbye.